Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, depending on where you are. It is 10:59 a.m. Eastern Time, and I am very excited about today's first country webinar that we're doing is MedTech Brazil. And our moderator today is going to be Bruno Oliveira, and he's going to be joined by Michelle and Martin and a number of others. And I'd like to invite everybody to turn your cameras on and participate in the call. But I would also like to share something completely new. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the chat, the link to this, which is, let me know if I have to put that in for everyone, share my screen. We've created a game on LinkedIn today, which is a completely different kind of thing. I put the link in the chat. What I'd like you to do is go in and type in, instead of using the chat function, just use the function, the comment function on here. Say where you're joining the call from, and how many of these 10 questions you think you can answer before we start. Um, and that's the warm-up questions. So the instructions are here, warm-up questions, how to play, the scoring, and this is going to be an exciting social experiment where we're going to sort of live map the Brazilian medtech market and see how many substantive comments we can actually generate in here about, what your opinions are, and you get extra points if you use a link or a citation, tag somebody who's relevant, and write a thoughtful response. So yeah, you'll find all the questions there. Now, Bruno, I met I think 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, when I was first launching MedTech Leading Voice. We had been in contact, and then I ran into him at Raps, and I was super excited to see him. And I was like, "Oh, we got to do something about Brazil." And then this opportunity came up. So I'm so glad that he's here. And I'm gonna be perfectly transparent. Yesterday morning, I knew nothing about the Brazilian medtech market except for the helpful post that Martin does about the ANVISA regulatory updates. And so I'm excited to learn from him and from all of you what's going on in Brazilian's medtech market. Let's map it out. Let's work together on this. So feel free to add your comments, and I am going to stop sharing that and um, let Bruno take over.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you so much, for everybody that is attending. It's a pleasure and an honor to be alongside you guys. I knew Martin and Sean already from LinkedIn. Now I got to know Michelle. Hello, Michelle. And it's a really great moment for me to be able to present a little more about the Brazilian landscape in matters of regulatory affairs. And please, everybody, be welcome to send your comments, raise your hands, share your doubts. We're here to discuss. Brazil is fascinating for a lot of reasons, and I hope to share at least most of them with you. So I will share my screen. As I understand, I'm working as a moderator, so uh, you know I will go through each of the phases and the steps that we put here. What am I sharing exactly? Okay, so let's begin. A little bit about me. I'm working as Director of Business Development and Marketing in a technical and regulatory consulting company that you can see here. It's I don't know how to, yeah, MSC MED. But I'm very, restless. So I do a lot of stuff. I work also at ABNT, which is our national ISO in Brazil, as national chair for cardiovascular implants and extracorporeal systems. And I also work as a Brazilian expert at ISO in international level for standards such as 14971, the new clinical evaluation standard 18969, a little bit with the 2416 and 17 standards, and also fundamental standards in implants for surgery, because most of my career was, in orthopedic devices, a lot of cardiovascular also, and things that are high risk, implantable, that kind of thing. I'm also national vice chair for the Regulatory Affairs Professional Society in Brazil. Our LNG is growing. We have around 20 people. And, it's been an amazing ride working and also meeting Sean during the last convergence. Also, a little bit about MSC MED. I think our biggest strength is that we have lots of technical people, around 30 people. We have different groupings of services, and I'm very excited, that we're about to open our first office out of Brazil, which will be in Delft in the Netherlands next year. So what is important? What is most important, about this session is that we unwrap a little about, everything that Brazil means. And I'm talking about both from a business and regulatory affairs perspective. So that is why we have some very, some bright numbers here regarding our rate of growth, the size of our market. It's the biggest in Latin America. We are usually the hub for companies that are going, to the other big markets like Mexico, Colombia, Argentina. We have lots of regulatory updates that I will go with them in the next slides, but I just wanted to bring some of the biggest guys here. We completely revamped our regulatory structure in the last years for medical devices, for IVDs, for clinical investigations. We really adopted, MDSAP in a very good way, and also Reliance structures. And we have, I think, a very good regulation regarding software as a medical devices, which I understand is a topic of great interest globally, and also in Brazil. We are getting, more and more clients at MSC MED that are looking at SAMD. Our private insurance coverage is growing. This is also very important for our market. We're talking about a little more than 200 million people. It kind of depends on the data that you get. It's like 20 million to 2030, 2050 million. It's considering the last census. And 1/4 of these people are using private coverage for health insurance, our health structure. Something that is very important is that what you know as SUS, SUS, is the whole structure. So even private coverage is inside this structure. It's considered part of the unique health system in Brazil. We also have, as the rest of the world, health expenditures that are growing, and our trade signals are, improving and making our market, bright and brighter. And this is how I pass. This is the moment that I pass the ball to Michelle, right?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Bruno. And thank
She's
you,
bringing
Sean.
insights. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like we are hosting the late night show, and Sean is Stephen Colbert, do the monologue to draw all the people in, and Bruno is the guest speaker. And like John Baptiste, just sprinkle some data magic and jazz music into it. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. And so here, like we pour the data from our own module, NyquistAI, which enables you to search all the global insights for medical device. And you can search in local language, in this case, I believe Portuguese or English, to pull the data. So the data is as fresh as you can get. It's like literally from today. I always like, I'm a big data nerd, and I always like to use data to tell a story. So when we see this data, this shows like Brazil is definitely one of the most dynamic and complex market from the whole Latin America, huge market potential. As of the latest data, as of today, there are over 173,000 medical devices that are registered with ANVISA, which is actually much bigger than my anticipation. And this is a powerful indicator of, you know, both the regulatory maturity and also the market opportunity. So let's break it down by the risk categories. Like we can see from class 1, the low risks, which is the bandages or non-invasive instruments. This shows that there are about 55,000 products, which means that, you know, the majority, like there are still significant amount of the market are like low risk products or like consumables, which is not surprising for an emerging market like Brazil. And class 2 device, medium risk, this is where it starts to get interesting. And this is the largest group among all the other categories. It has 71,000 of devices, including diagnostic equipment and many active medical tools. Class 3 is like high risk, roughly around 25,000 registered devices. They are typically implantables and life support systems. Class 4, which is very interesting compared with the US or like a EU module, where people normally have 3 level of risk categories. You can see there's for the maximum risk close to 8,800. So which shows from a market perspective, if I'm like a sophisticated or high-tech medical device company, this give me hope that even for Brazil, there's like a market for most complex and high-stake technologies. The market is there. So as for in vitro diagnosis, especially for class A, I know like some of the audience are in IVD. There are about 575 entries, a small but overall very strategic component. So I hope those data can tell you a very clear story. Brazil is not just importing technology anymore. Like China, like other countries, is a major hub for regulatory activities and product diversities, and almost like, you know, 30,000 registered companies that are already like working and you know, generating profit from the Brazil medical device market. So I see this as a lot of opportunity, and I will pass on to Bruno to now we see the market opportunity, the numbers and potential market and money that is waving to us. How do we, you know, crack the code of regulatory and other like things we need to learn to really seize the opportunity in the Brazil market? Bruno, back to you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Yeah, I feel like I'm in a Saturday night show. It's a very good, you know, way to say it. You know, high energy.
Yeah.
Oh, we have Josué here. I know this guy. Hello, hello. Hi, Josué.
There we go. Hey, Bruno.
Hey.
Nice to see you.
Oh, it's amazing to see you.
What a
It's
nice surprise.
another day to, yeah, another one of those persons, Sean, you know, the people that we talk by phone and LinkedIn, you know. And hello, great to see you.
Great to see you. Great to see you, Bruno. Very excited to learn more about the Brazilian market. And this more a question for Michelle, because we also monitor, we have this data in Mexico that we built with public available data. Mm-hmm. So what is the time frame? You say 173,000 devices. Is that from this year? Is that from like a 10-year span?
Oh, historical. I can quickly look at the oldest devices. Let me see. I have my database pulled. I think it's historical. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. If you can confirm that later on, so I can compare with the Mexican market a little bit.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Great to see you, Josue. Josue helped me a lot in my last company. My last company, I was working as a manufacturer, helped with the Mexican market. So yeah, and you know, talking about IVDs, this last point that Michelle was telling us, it's the fastest growing market, you know, among the devices in Brazil. And we are talking both about, you know, the business side and the regulatory side. Recently, we had presentations from ANVISA in an international seminar hosted by our association for importers and distributors. And the general manager for medical devices, she was telling us and presenting data showing, you know, the biggest increase among all the processes that were entering her area. It's a very interesting point. So here we have some pages where we'll be exploring some details about the Brazilian regulatory MAID, maybe, because the regulations there are very, you know, it's like a big puzzle. There are pieces that you have to bring together to be able to work or play, depending on how you face regulatory affairs troubles. It's important to say that our main authority is ANVISA, that our main regulation for the medical devices processes like classification, notification, registration, labeling is RDC 751. I'm not going to be, you know, in every slide saying all the numbers because it's not very easy to, you know, keep telling big numbers when you're not in your language. But I wanted to express, you know, to share with you, everybody that is here, the many different aspects that we have. But it's important to tell you guys that 751 is like the main regulation for medical devices. That we have this IN 742020, which is so important because it tells you the correct path to tell ANVISA what are the changes that you are making to a registration. So even though the rules for changing are in 751, this IN would be something like normative instruction. This normative instruction tells you what are the subjects that you need to enter the ANVISA system to classify what you want to change. Okay. We also have our GSPR. You know, it's in fact here it's the essential requirements for safety and performance, but it's important that everybody knows about RDC 848. It includes IVDs, so you know it's also a top-notch, very important. You know, your life for Brazil. And we also have the good manufacturing practices that appear in our regulation, you know, kind of intertwined with MDSAP when we're talking about those 4 RDCs here. You know, the main one is 1665, but we will have some important aspects to be considered in 687 because it will tell you when a manufacturing unit must be certified. And when we are dealing, you know, with international situations, considering the amount of decentralization of supply chains, it can, you know, get a little tricky when you are discussing the regulatory paths in Brazil. Also, something that is important, MDSAP, when you get your good manufacturing practices via MDSAP, it lasts for 4 years, which is very good in comparison with our standard 2 years when it's not MDSAP certified, when the manufacturing unit is not MDSAP certified. And here we have a whole lot of other subjects, okay? As I said, it's kind of intricate, we have many pieces, but for IVDs, this RGC is the equivalent of 751. So if you want to register an IVD in Brazil, you have to go through 830, for example. When you're talking about SAMDs, we have another one. It brings, you have to use it together with 751 because it brings some software specific requirements. If we go for personalized devices, and somebody may be thinking, what the heck is that? In Brazil, we have this personalized word for devices that we call under 3 categories. We may be talking about what somebody in Europe would be referring to as a custom-made device. And we could be talking about patient-specific devices, where you have a design envelope, as the FDA says. You have a design envelope for your project, and it encompasses, groups of configurations of devices. And you have adaptable devices, like, small plates that you can adapt when using for, maxillofacial surgeries. Hello, Martin. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, Martin, what is your experience with your IVD in Brazil?
Oh, I was putting an IVD in a point-of-care PCR test system into Brazil in the middle of COVID.
Oh, yeah.
And you would think it gets through emergency use authorization. But there's a little catch. This device had wireless connectivity. I must hide it. So
Yeah, your sound is a little low for me.
is it? Wait.
I don't know if it's for everybody.
Oh, I know. Wait. Now should be better.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. So I had a task to get a point-of-care PCR test system into Brazil in the middle of COVID. And I'd already got it into quite a few countries in Africa, which is also not that easy, and in quite several other countries. But the key with this device is it had wireless connectivity. I made a slide for wireless connectivity here somewhere. And ANVISA won't accept a device, even for emergency use authorization, with wireless connectivity, unless you've had it approved by Anatel or Antel.
Yeah, Anatel, yeah.
Anatel, yeah. So Anatel, and then here's the key thing, right? This is what makes Brazil special, other than the coffee. And that is that Anatel won't accept accredited testing from other sources. So you have to go to one of their accredited labs for your EMC and immunity testing. So just beware. If you've got a device with wireless connectivity, meaning it has Bluetooth or Wi-Fi in it, you're going to have it tested before you get it approved as a device. And then I have an extra special piece of information. So in this device was a module for running the wireless connectivity, an off-the-shelf piece of electronics. So in the US, the FCC wanted their sticker on the module. This module wasn't even visible to the outside of the device. So when ANVISA see this module, they also want their sticker on the module. So just be aware of these tiny details when you're trying to get approval in Brazil. Other than that, I would say, yes, you have lots of regulations to go through. Perhaps a very good guide from your submission side of things is that Brazil is a member of IMDRF, and you will find in the table of contents for IVDs and for medical devices all the specialities required by ANVISA, except for wireless connectivity.
Yeah.
And the other piece is, you know, we're seeing a lot of talk about AI. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bruno, but AI in Brazil is currently managed through the normal software channel because they don't have a specific AI legislation at this moment in time. But they will probably come up with something because you will see sometimes ANVISA are ahead of the FDA. Like with the whole blood pressure monitoring on watches and glucose monitoring, they were bringing out warnings before the FDA were. So
yeah.
It's good to watch Brazil because you can it's almost like an early warning system for the rest of the world.
Yeah, and it's thank you, Martin. It's an interesting point to bring because Brazil is, you know, spearheading initiatives towards harmonization, convergence, and it's also something that happens because of the size of, you know, the amount of personnel in ANVISA. Because, for example, the area in ANVISA that would be like the CDRH for the US, you know, in ANVISA they have 48 people. For the Brazilian CDRH, you know, it's crazy to regulate and control, you know, for all those things. So that is why ANVISA is kind of an early adopter. If there's something that can speed up things, you know, and make things, you know, lighter, you know, less burdensome for them, they will try to adopt as early as possible. That's a very good point.
Yes, and I also think there's a really interesting point from a commercial viewpoint. With this, what Michelle was mentioning about the demographics, they have, you have a huge population, but they're very concentrated in set centers. So you look at this large population, large country, but actually the concentrations of the populations are in very specific areas.
Yeah. I mean, the state of São Paulo, for example, which is, you know, the economically speaking, the main state, and we have like 40 million of those, you know, little less than 200 million people in the state of São Paulo. So yeah, it's a lot of concentration. And you know, speaking about clinical, yeah, we have you know, a lot of guidances here, 3 documents for clinical investigations, and also 1 guidance for clinical evaluations, which, as Martin's pointing, you know, is really well aligned with the IMDRF guidance on clinical evaluation. Everybody went through the situations here where somebody is asking how much will it cost to do something for ANVISA. So that is why I brought up the fees regulation. There you find, you know, how much it costs for each kind of submission. It's not very, you know, easy to use, but it's there. And for clinical questions, I also brought up the compassionate use regulation, which is, you know, in many situations, the first step that you can use, you know, for the clinical side of as you enter the market. We also have regulations for Reliance, which is, as Martin pointed, ANVISA, you know, is going really, you know, adopting as fast as possible and using a lot. We have our UDI regulation for people involved with medical equipment. We have used and reconditioned medical devices regulation that is really important for the businesses. Our very, you know, specific grouping rules. This is kind of a mess, I have to say. You know, it's, I know that, you know, maybe somebody from ANVISA is hearing that, but it's kind of a mess when we compare, you know, with the structures from other countries. It can give you lots of headaches depending on what you're trying to regulate, you know, trying to bring to the market. We have this very good word, technovigilance, that is, you know, the vigilance that is focused on our medical devices. And it's from an older era, you know, as you can see, 2009. Our establishment registration regulation, also here. and two regulations about importation of medical devices into Brazil, especially RDC 81 2008. It has like, I don't know how many amendments, lots of amendments, but it's the main pathway here.
I have a
So,
question, Bruno.
hello, Rob.
Yeah, I had put a question in the chat, but Sean suggested I just ask.
Okay.
We've seen a lot of increase in Brazilian companies coming to the US just this year. I think a lot of that has to do with tariffs on China goods, making it more expensive to buy products from China. So they're looking for other countries to buy products from that are high quality, and Brazil is a great market to buy them from. So we're seeing those Brazilian products come to the US. Are you seeing more US products going to Brazil, or is that just an anomaly due to the tariff situation in the US?
In our day-to-day practice, we have seen a lot of, I don't know if a lot, but more and more US companies, talking to us and asking about the Brazilian market. It's getting, more and more common. You're getting more clients from the US. Yeah.
And how about on the clinical side? We have a lot of clients that are looking for sites to do clinical studies, and certainly Brazil would be a good market to do that in. You have a very large population in the cities, and a high quality of medicine. So what is the sort of the turnaround time in trying to get a clinical study approved by ANVISA?
I don't know if I understood completely what you meant by turnaround time.
So when we submit an IDE submission in the US,
Okay.
they're supposed to give us a response in a very short amount of time, but usually there are questions and it gets stalled. And so it can take many months to get an IDE approved. And I didn't have any experience doing a clinical study in Brazil. I was wondering how long it takes to submit and get approved to do a clinical study.
Okay, thank you. That depends a lot on the sites that you choose, because there's a slide about that ahead, but basically we have the ethics committees that are present in each site, and most of them, more than 99% of them they have CEPs. It's like they have an internal committee that's the ethical committee, and they can evaluate your ethical submission in parallel with ANVISA. That is very good. In our older regulation, you had to go through the ethics and then regulatory. It would take like 3 years, 4 years, and lots of time, a lot of time. And now you can submit in parallel. So you activate this ethical committee in the sites, but you have to go, in each site. If you have one site among them that has what we call like CONEP level. CONEP is the name of the national structure. They can move faster with your ethical submission. Okay. So those 3 to 4 year timelines, they reduced, like, considering that you are sending a regulatory submission in parallel, to like 1 to 2 years. Okay, it really depends, because if you're talking about lower risk classes, simpler devices, we go more like to this 1 year side. Okay, so if it's very complex or high risk class, you go towards the 2 year, especially if you don't have at least one site in your sites, your selected sites, that have this CONEP. We call it CONEP power, internally. It's they have the high power, to help you to evaluate this ethical submission. Okay, so it's those timelines, more or less.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And it's great to meet you also here online. I'm a follower.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we also have, the importation rules, and here we have some registration pathways. Okay, so when you're talking about devices that are class 1 or 2, you have to do a notification. It's kind of simple. It's like a form that you fill with the information from your technical dossier. And then for devices that are classes 3 and 4, you have to do a registration, which is sending the actual dossier to ANVISA for ANVISA to evaluate. You have GMP certification. That is very important. So ANVISA expects you to, to comply with the GMP from Brazil for devices that are 1 and 2, but you don't have to be certified. Okay, if you're talking about classes 3 and 4, you have to be certified. So you need to ask ANVISA to go there and look, see, audit your quality management system. Something that I inserted here, it's important to keep the dossier up to date for devices that are class 1 and 2. We've been seeing a lot of situations in Brazil where ANVISA, goes for a GMP for your class 3 and 4 devices, and they ask, for a dossier from a class 2 in the midst of the process. So it's good to have your dossier updated. And it's also important to take good care of your notifications, because ANVISA also is looking, is doing more efforts reviewing the notifications after they are authorized. For quality audits, what we see in Brazil is that MDSAP, it's growing in importance, in adoption. People are getting, more and more usage to it. Basically because ANVISA, most probably, at least, almost certainly won't visit you for to do a GMP if you have an MDSAP certification. And also when you ask for the good manufacturing practices certification using the MDSAP certificate, times are, much less. It's like more than 50–60% less time for the evaluation and your certification to go, but you still have to pay 72,000 reais to ask. Okay, so the payment is not waived. You have to so you have to pay for MDSAP and then pay the GMP process.
So Stephanie, you had a question regarding MDSAP and what that you had put in the chat. Let me see what it said. As a foreign manufacturer with MDSAP certificate, ANVISA does not come and audit immediately if one has MDSAP certificate. Instead, they come after a few years, correct?
That's what they said at the IMDRF meeting. Hi, Bruno.
Hello.
And I was just wondering, because I had a customer lately and they were asking, well, why do I need to do an MDSAP? And I said, well, the likelihood that they're coming is going to probably be not immediate. I mean, that's what I was hearing,
Yeah.
but I'm, what the officials say and what's actually happening on the ground is sometimes two different things. And I just want to have confirmation on, how they view foreign manufacturers in terms of this certificate and not having one or having one. If there's a big difference in the approach of ANVISA.
Yeah, there's a big difference. It's a big difference of approach, because as you pointed well, Stephanie, they won't go, right away. But I think it's very good that we have here. I don't know if you see my arrow. Yeah, you see it. This regulation here, 497/2021, it gives you details about the administrative processes that ANVISA uses for the GMP. And it tells you exactly, no, not exactly, but it tells you this, they may go in future iterations when you ask, for the renewals of the good manufacturing practices. And this is fairly new, tells a little more about how this renewal process happens. So there's probably details, there are details there that you can use to kind of predict And they have also issued recently, I can't remember if it's an RGC or if it's a guidance document. I can, talk to Sean and bring this information back after, but they are giving more transparency about their risk management process for, choosing to go to manufacturer A or B. That usually happens after 6 years, something like 6-ish years, after the first certification.
I have another question just associated with this. What's the approach or what's the difference in approach between Brazilian manufacturers and those outside of Brazil, like for example, European? Is there a different approach? Is there a different time span between audits? I mean, how do they do this? I guess what I'm trying to get to the heart of is, do they see foreign manufacturers as places where they need to audit more? Is there continental differences on their approach and frequency of auditing on site?
Okay, I I don't think there's an official information about that. Maybe in this last document that I mentioned, there could be something, but I highly believe that is not the case. That they would put geographical factors, to make their decision about the approaches. What happens is that if you're asking for the GMP only, the Brazilian GMP only, it will last 2 years, and you have bigger, you have a line that is big, and that when the specialists in ANVISA, they take your process, they will take more time, to evaluate the documentation and probably to schedule the visit, the inspection. Meanwhile, if you have the MDSAP, the evaluation time is smaller, you have less time, and they won't, at least in the first iteration, go to the place. Also, sometimes people in Europe, for example, they will feel like the inspection is very hard because for inspections that are outside of Brazil, they will only receive the federal people from ANVISA. Okay, ANVISA in Brazil is inside a bigger structure. It's the National System of Vigilance, of Health Vigilance. It's called SNVS. And sometimes, for example, in São Paulo or Paraná, some states inside of the country, they will send only state people instead of the federal people. And usually the federal guys, they, are a little tougher, or, are a little more knowledgeable about how some things, work, including, for example, scientific topics. And, usually you can expect a harder inspection, the guys from the federal level. And, nobody from state level will go outside of the country to do an inspection.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that information. That's helpful.
Great, thank you.
So we have a lot of slides left. Let's keep moving.
Yeah, sorry.
I can say quickly that I have a client that gets inspected regularly from ANVISA in the US, and when they had their MDSAP, which they let lapse, they weren't getting inspected at all. They got one inspection and then didn't see ANVISA for quite a while. So it makes a night and day difference for US manufacturers, at least in that sample size of one.
Great. Yeah.
The words I remember in the IMDRF, and maybe my hearing was not good, was if you didn't have the MDSAP certificate, that foreign manufacturers would be audited within the year. And if you had the MDSAP certificate, it would take us several years before they come by. Maybe my hearing was wrong, but yeah. Anyways, thanks.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that MDSAP plays a factor, of their trust. And I really have to find that document, Stephanie. you sparked a big necessity. I need to find it, but then I'll come back. Then I'll come back to that. It's important, as Martin was telling us about Anatel, it's important to remember that we have Inmetro for medical electrical equipment. And it's like here we have our bodies, like our notified bodies, but it's just a different name, product certification bodies. They are accredited by Inmetro, and you have to hire one of them to conduct your conformity assessment process for your medical electrical equipment. This will generate a certificate, and you use that certificate with ANVISA to register your make your notification. Okay, some class 2 devices to ANVISA. Here we have Anatel, as Martin was pointing. The names change a little, but the idea is the same. It's just that Anatel is focused on wireless communication and all the interference questions that relate to this wireless communication.
In general, this is the same. In general, this is the same all over the world, right? Even in and in the US, you have the FCC, and in Europe you have this radio RED directive. But basically, as soon as you move out of those jurisdictions, I think the list, last time I looked at, it's like over 150 different radio telecoms organizations that you have to get approval from for wireless communications. And some of them require you to submit the device actually to the equivalent of Anatel, and others will let you just provide a certificate from someone else and say it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have this maybe this perk in Brazilian reality, right? That it's another agency, another regulatory agency that is doing that. For AMDs, I put in the chat a document that I wanted to share with you guys that relates to a guideline for the software notification process. It's focused on notifications because most of the situations will fall under class 1 or 2 of the SAMGs, at least in our reality. But it's important to demonstrate, your validations, your, the cybersecurity documentation, clinical evaluation. It's under RDC 657, you have to show all this information aligned with 751 for SAMGs. Something that is very important and that many people don't know is that we have economic monitoring of medical devices in Brazil. So if you are entering the market, I wrote it wrong here, but if you are entering the market with implantable defibrillators, cardiac valves, coronary stents of any kind, or pacemakers, you have to send economic information. You have to send technical attributes of your device and economic information, because ANVISA wants to reduce information asymmetries inside our health system. They are working alongside SUS to do that. And some hot topics for our collegiate of directors, GCOL. It's interesting because I was checking our agenda regulatoria, or regulatory agenda for the next years. I didn't see AI there. I think maybe it will, because it's not closed. It's just a contribution document, but it was kind of interesting that I did not see AI there. But we have a big battle happening about reusable medical devices in reprocessing rules, innovative medical devices, so faster tracks, so we can, do early feasibility studies, for example, and get more data and more devices faster to the market. There are regulatory updates previewed for SAMGs and those personalized medical devices that I mentioned. And we need to create a true PMS regulation in Brazil, because today we only have vigilance. It's super limited, and ANVISA is working on improving this somewhat old regulation already. Reimbursement and market. Here we have to say that you can choose to go, guns blazing to CONITEC and try to bring your device into the reimbursement rules for the entire SUS system. It's a big battle. 6 months. I don't think it will be 6 months. I think it will take, at least 1 year, because you have public consultations. There's a lot of coming and going of information. You can go to ANS, which is the regulatory agency for the private insurance, the private payment sources. And there's also this very important practical angle here, because you can, of course, also study the market. For example, if you have hospitals that are very important for you, you can study the market and understand the most important payment sources for them, and try to convince those payment sources to bring your device, or in fact, they will bring your procedure, okay, into their tables. And you can, kind of start small, but still get some money from the beginning, to start your processes. Here I have, put all the important rules. Clinical trials, we have our registry, which is REBC. And it's widely used for people to put the information of many different health technologies, medical devices among them. We have this structure with ethics oversight that I was mentioning to Rob a little time before. It's important to plan for, multi-centric timelines if you want to conduct a successful clinical trial in Brazil. Something that is very important that is happening now are those 2 rules. They are very new, and they are basically changing how things work in regards to ethics committees and how your clinical trial, should be done. I won't go into details because I don't have time, but it's something to be, careful about. Here, I think it's the part where I bring Martin, maybe. I don't know. When I was editing the slide, I saw, Martin, coming and going, his name, I don't know if you want to comment something, because there's a lot of information here.
I saw this slide and I thought, oh, someone's done this already. I don't have to do anything.
That was me. I did.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think the key thing between, like, if you look at the lower class of devices in the US and in Brazil, you have to give notification. And in the EU, the lower class of devices, you just self-declare. You don't give anybody notification. And you wait for an unannounced audit by the authorities. It's not the notified body that will come and knock on the door. And then you'll be one of the 80% of companies that are non-compliant. So that, for me, that's the really key difference here. I would say it falls into this sort of international alignment, but it's more closely aligned with the US than it is with the EU.
Yeah, this is a very interesting topic. We should have a meeting just to discuss that. If Brazil is aligned with, one or the other, because it's an interesting situation. Our rules, our classification rules are fully aligned with Europe. But how we handle some processes during the evaluation are more aligned with how GE works. It's an interesting discussion. We have a very strong, growing market for startups and innovation. I think, I need to really summarize the information, go fast, but those guys, for example, the district and ABSS are 2 major players in the market that are, bringing a lot of new technologies that are bursting out, out of the universities, which are, we have very strong universities here for medical technology. Some key risks to consider if you don't have a clear path, for the entities of the market to pay for your device. If it's something that is not well aligned, it's important to consider reimbursement in parallel with regulatory. Otherwise, things, you have so much time, to go into the market that it won't make, it won't be very good. And as Rob was, telling ethic timelines, we have to consider that, especially now, because even our authorities, they are, sedimenting, I don't know if I'm telling the correct word, but they are, letting the new regulations sink into their places, and there's some uncertainty here around that. Well, opportunities for the market, we have, we have to check MDSAP, as we were telling along, this meeting. We have a good amount of SA&D clarity, for sure, in our regulation. So, and we, as Rob was, asking about the US players coming to Brazil, we are also getting more and more clients interested in SA&D, both inside and outside Brazil. Our market growth, is very positive for the next years, and it's important to consider Reliance. If you are in the US, in Canada, in Japan, or in Australia, and your Australian approval is not, was not obtained via the European Reliance, it's important. You can use the Reliance in Brazil, and it's very good because what we are getting, from our reviews, and we have lots of reviews, a lot of database, is that ANVISA takes for sure less time and less attention when go into the details of each part of your submission, like risk management, usability, MRI compatibility, biological and clinical evaluations, shelf life studies, that kind of thing. When you do a Reliance that is that gets through the process, they are definitely not going into a lot of detail as they do when a submission is not the Reliance program.
Bruno, but when you're talking about Reliance, you're talking about IMDRF or Reliance wholly, right? Or are you talking about other Reliance models? Because the IMDRF has, of course, the members of Brazil, Japan, Canada, United States, right? Or are you talking,
yes.
because there are different Reliance models out there. I just wanted to have clarification. Thanks.
Yes, it's the IMDRF. It's the only current Reliance route for medical devices in Brazil is the IMDRF countries. So those other four besides Brazil.
A lot of companies that are coming up with novel devices and they go after the US market, they find that they're a de novo pathway, which is a very slow and inefficient process in the US. Only because I know firsthand, I've done quite a few of them. Yeah. And I often end up recommending to companies that you might want to try another country, and they're like, "Oh, should we go to Europe?" I'm like, "No, that's just as bad. It'll also cost more." But Canada is a very fast route for a lot of them if they're a Class 2 device. But I'm thinking that us going to Brazil might be another option to them as well. You wouldn't have that Reliance process, but you would have a market that's in between or very close to the size of the US market. So it would be more attractive from a financial standpoint than going to Canada, which is 1/10 the size of the US.
Yes, that's a very good reasoning, I think. And, regarding both size of market, financial power.
Yeah, and I think the reimbursement advantages might help them as well, because with a very novel product, reimbursement's usually a little challenging.
Yes. Yeah, reimbursement is always challenging, I think. It varies a lot between the countries. At least, in my regulatory life, I've seen reimbursement. It's another area, right? Okay, so those things are very important here. So always confirm risk class and route, but always confirm grouping. Okay, it's very important. It will get you out of the market if you don't do a good job dealing with the grouping rules for ANVISA. It's kind of messy. It's important to decide clinical evidence plans, register studies if that's the case. Consider that our clinical evaluation is really close to what the IMDRF is telling us in their guidance. If reimbursement is important, you may go through CONITEC or ANS. Those are two different instances. The good side of going to CONITEC, if you think you can, if you have the budget and are organized enough, is that after 6 months that technology is approved by CONITEC, it must be incorporated by ANS. That's a very good point. Also, if eligible, enrolling in MDSAP to avoid getting lots of visits from Visa. Oh, and that's it. A lot of information. Sorry, guys, if I was a little overwhelming, but I tried to be thoughtful of all the aspects and perks of the Brazilian market. Those RDCs here are about 20 to 25% of all the RDCs that we have in the country. So it's a lot of stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this on short notice. Thanks to Martin and Michelle for their contributions as well. Rob and Stephanie, thank you. I really enjoyed this. I learned a lot about the Brazilian market. I don't know about anybody else. As I said yesterday morning, I woke up and it was like, I don't know that much about the Brazilian market. Let's go. And some deep research cues later to ChatGPT, and I was well on my way. And then Bruno filled in the gaps, and this is awesome. Yeah, I try the game that I put in the in LinkedIn. And next week, next week we're gonna have Franklin Health is going to be a new CRO based in the UK. Is going to be presenting on 5 biggest mistakes. I don't remember, in getting your clinical trials started, something like that. Yeah, come out next week for a clinical outlook, and then we have a number of other interesting ones coming up. Rob is going to be presenting on his new lead auditor program. I don't know how many of you were on yesterday. He did a webinar with Jose on IEC 62304, and that was very helpful. We have a bunch of webinars coming up on MedTech Leading Voice. You'll find them all on medtechleadingvoice.com under events. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube, subscribe, tell a friend, bring a friend, and interact with the other participants. I encourage you to network among yourselves, and make connections. That's what this group is about. And yeah, I hope to see you next week.